If you are someone that's currently bulking right now and you feel as though you've put on a little bit too much body fat and you're not actually building muscle, when you look in the mirror, it feels as though you haven't made progress. Well, I'm here to tell you why that strategy is wrong, but don't worry. In this video, I'm going to give you the exact blueprint, the step-by-step process that you need to follow in order to maximize your muscle building capabilities and actually limit the amount of body fat that you gain so you can build a lean, athletic physique. Now, if you stick around to the end of the video, step number 12, there's a bonus. If you follow that methodology, I can 100% guarantee that you will dramatically change your physique. And throughout the course of the video, there's also going to be hidden Easter eggs, things that I'm going to give you which will help you move forward on your muscle building journey. So we're actually going to start with my bulking journey, my teachings, my learnings, my methodology, the mistakes that I've made so that you can fast track your progress and you don't make the mistakes that I made 5 years ago. We'll look at why my approach was wrong and how we can actually fix it. We'll look at muscle protein synthesis specifically. Is there a ceiling when it comes to how much protein you should be eating? We'll look at bulking and what it actually is. We'll look at the biggest mistake that you can make when it comes to designing your overall bulking strategy. We'll take a look at the calorie surplus rule, so the number of calories that you should be consuming rather than just being fixated on eating everything which is in front of you. We'll look at the rate of weight gain, so how much weight you should actually be gaining on a week-by-week basis. And then we'll finish off with a protein and macronutrient design, how we can actually look at calorie partitioning in order to improve your body composition and build muscle and prevent, or I guess limit, the amount of body fat that you put on. We'll look at training mistakes, so why you may not be seeing growth in terms of your training program design. On top of that, it's going to be recovery. Why are you ignoring your recovery when ultimately recovery is going to be the ingredient which helps your muscles to grow? And then we'll finish off with how to bulk properly. I'll give you the step-by-step roadmap or blueprint, and we'll finish off with some final thoughts. And if you stick around, you will also get that bonus. So let's start with part one, my bulking journey. Do you know what? I actually used to think that bulking meant eat everything in sight. If you ate more, well, obviously, yeah, you would grow, right? How wrong I was, and I was actually just slamming as many calories as I could every single day. And when I look back, this actually stemmed from watching YouTube, being engrossed in social media, watching bodybuilders eat everything in front of them, because obviously if you eat more food and you eat more calories, well, you are going to maximize your muscle building capabilities. What I didn't understand at the time was those individuals were enhanced. They were taking performance enhancing drugs, things like exogenous insulin as well. So of course, their internal physiology or biology was different to mine, but I didn't understand it at the time. And I thought I just needed to eat more in order to build more muscle. Now, when I say I didn't track calories, macronutrients, or have any structure, I had 3 meals a day. Those meals actually came to around 3,000 calories, and I guess anything on top of that was a bonus. I was focusing on protein and calories at the time, 200 grams of protein, 3,000 calories, and of course, if I was to have sugary refined carbs, things like donuts or chocolate milk or apple juice at the time, just because my appetite was super low, it was the only way, in my eyes, I could get calories in. Well, hey, not the best for you, right? But again, I was just so fixated on, well, that's got 800 calories in. Great. That's going to help me on my muscle building journey. And my mindset was super simple. The more I ate, the more I would grow. But in reality, I was mostly just increasing my body weight. I didn't necessarily look at my body composition. I was just looking down at the scales. And if it went up by a few kilos every single week, and yes, I do mean a few kilos, not just half a kilo, I must have been gaining muscle. But I eventually realized my approach wasn't as effective as I thought. But let me bring you back to the start of my transformation journey. I was 107 kilos and I decided to lose 30 kilos of body fat. And this was the result. I finished at 77 kilos, and I kind of look back and I did a photo shoot, and this physique here reminds me, if you've ever seen Wolverine, where he almost comes out of the tank, and he's got those like metal, let's call them sticks. I don't even know what they're called. Claws, right? That's how I felt at the time. I was somewhat lean. I probably could have pulled down maybe another 2 or 3 kilo, but we can see my abs there. We can also see the separation in my quads. I would say that's a pretty good physique, right? But my mind was still fixated on building muscle, even though I'd lost that 30 kilos. I knew that if I dieted even more, I would start to lose muscle. So within 1 year, I'd actually gained 20 kilos. I was 97 kilos. And look at my body composition. I was holding onto stubborn belly fat, which sat at the bottom of my belly. You could argue that my body composition at 97 kilos was actually worse than 107 kilos, because you can kind of see my abs there. Of course, there's sort of no separation in my quads, but we can see some abdominal definition sort of at the top. So I knew that something needed to change. I knew that my strategy of just eating as many calories as I could, it was wrong. And it led me to sort of look at the research behind how to actually build muscle the right way. And it brings us on to part 2, why that approach is wrong. If we actually take a look at muscle growth as a whole, it's governed by something called muscle protein synthesis. And that has a biological ceiling per day, around 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day. And that was established by Morton et al. In the British Journal of Sports Medicine back in 2018. Now, before we have the keyboard warriors entering my comment section saying, well, there's no biological ceiling per day, I'd agree. But I think that range is good for someone to actually strategize around how much protein they should be consuming, whether it's at the upper end of 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, or whether it's 1.6 grams, especially if they're brand new to sort of macronutrients, resistance training, and health as a whole. I'm sure as new evidence emerges over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we will have a better understanding on whether there is a biological ceiling for the amount of protein that you should be consuming per day to maximize muscle protein synthesis. There are studies out there right now suggesting that anything above 25 to 40 grams of protein in a meal, let's say hypothetically I was consuming 45 or 50 grams, well, that 10 grams is going to be wasted. We don't know. And I guess genetics would play a role, but I guess in terms of standardization on the research, total protein intake across the day matters. The amount of protein that you consume is incredibly more important than the amount of protein in each meal. However, in my opinion, you could actually improve muscle protein synthesis by strategizing how much protein goes into each meal. However, if we just go based on what Morton et al. Has said in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, once muscle protein synthesis is maximally stimulated through training and sufficient protein intake, additional calories do not further increase muscle gain. That excess energy intake beyond this point is stored primarily as adipose tissue, fat mass, not lean tissue. So that looks at calories as a whole. So if you're eating above your maintenance calories, a significant amount, well, the excess is going to be stored as body fat. This is why very large surpluses do not accelerate hypertrophy. They only increase total weight gain, not muscle efficiency. So if we actually take a look at that graph, on the left-hand side, we've got muscle gains, and on the bottom, we've got protein intake, grams per kilogram per day. And it suggests that if you consume more calories or more protein, which is pushed towards those calories above your maintenance, beyond this range, well, there's diminishing returns. And I guess the saying is too much of anything is a bad thing, right? It's what I call the Goldilocks theory. Too hot, too cold, just right. I do believe that there needs to be a middle ground with how much protein you should consume, and I guess the amount of protein that you consume, and then the amount of protein beyond that range doesn't necessarily go towards muscle building. I'm not sure, but does it go towards other biological processes within the body? 100%. But like I said, as new evidence emerges, I'm sure we'll have more accurate sort of data on that. So what is bulking? Bulking doesn't mean eating as many calories as you can. It means eating slightly more calories than your body burns. So you have extra energy to build muscle. And the main thing that makes muscle grow is actually strength training. Lifting weights with enough effort and progression. So going into the gym and actually attacking your working sets, not just sort of going through the motions and moving that dumbbell or moving that barbell from A to B. Food helps your body repair and build new muscle after training. So the way I describe it is I want you to imagine that your muscle fibers are bridges. And what resistance training does is it actually breaks down that bridge so it collapses. So now there's a gap. And what protein does is it comes along and it pretty much repairs that bridge. It helps to build new tissue. It's almost like the cement between each brick that connects that bridge together. So now we've got strengthened or reinforcements within that bridge. It's built stronger. The goal of bulking is to actually build muscle as efficiently as possible and gain as little fat as possible at the same time. Because muscle growth is slow in nature. Of course, it's pretty rapid if you are enhanced. But bulking as a whole, whether you are enhanced or whether you are a natural, it should be slow. It should be controlled. Eating way more food than needed does not speed up muscle growth. It mostly leads to fat gain. And I found that out once I gained that 20 kilos in the space of a year. So we can see that I'm lifting 75 kilo dumbbells. I can remember this very, very well. I did them for 8 repetitions. I was around 90 kilos at the time. And then I'm thinking post-workout, I need to get a good amount of protein in. Let's say within that range, 25 to 40 grams of protein post-workout. I mean, like, to be honest, any more in the grand scheme of things, just, I remember sort of like pushing 60 or 70 grams of protein post-workout in a meal. Who knows how much the body actually uses and whether there is a biological ceiling? Try it. In terms of digestion, obviously that's a different sort of topic that we can cover, whether you can actually digest, 70 grams of protein post-workout compared to sort of the 25 to 40 grams. But just try it. Start with the 25 to 40 gram range and then push up if you feel as though you can. But I would say we want to have a high amount of carbohydrate post-workout, a moderate amount of protein, very little fat, but calories as a whole is going to be important across the day, not just post-workout. So let's take a look at the biggest mistakes, because many people, when they try to bulk without tracking how much they're actually eating, it turns into a dirty bulk, right? And that's where you eat way above what's needed. And the belief is, for the majority of people, and it was for myself 5 years ago, that the more you eat, the more muscle you'll build. But in reality, that just leads to rapid weight gain. Most of the extra calories get stored as body fat. And we can definitely see that in my physique here, right? I've got a little bit of gynecomastia here. We can obviously see I don't have visible abs. On the right-hand side, I've got a significant amount of subcutaneous fat. stored around my abdominal cavity. Don't get me wrong, like, I've definitely built muscle tissue, but I was dirty bulking at the time. I had really poor body composition. I was bigger, I was stronger, but I sacrificed my health and my body composition for that. Who knows how much muscle I actually built here? We can definitely say that there was some insulin resistance based on the amount of body fat that it started to gain towards the end of that dirty bulk. But this is inefficient for muscle gain. Dirty bulking does not mean you're going to gain more muscle. You actually need to look at the strategy behind how you can actually build muscle through proper nutrition and proper training, rather than just eating as many calories as you can or as much food as you can. But also how you train. So, part 5, the calorie surplus rule. The best calorie surplus for lean muscle gain is usually 200 to 400 calories per day. I would say the sweet spot is about 300. So if you're consuming 2,400 calories and you know that's your maintenance, where you maintain your body weight, start with 200, move up to 300 on a weekly basis. If you find that you're now gaining a good amount of weight and you're seeing noticeable differences in strength and also your body composition, keep it there. There's no need to push more. However, if you start to see dips in strength and there's not much change, push towards 400 calories per day. But once again, you need to assess your overall body composition. Am I actually gaining muscle? Are my numbers going up in the gym? Or is it just body fat which I'm accumulating? And that gives your body enough energy to support muscle growth without overdoing it. And if you eat more than this, you don't actually build muscle faster. You mainly increase your fat storage, and your body can only build a limited amount of muscle each week, no matter how much you eat. And of course, that's going to depend on whether you are a beginner, an intermediate, or advanced lifter. Now, once that limit is reached, extra calories, they can't be used for more muscle. And again, it's that idea of that biological ceiling when it comes to muscle protein synthesis. But once again, I'm sure as new evidence emerges and we'll have more data on how much and how many calories and sort of how much protein goes towards muscle building, then we can have more accurate ranges, because some people might respond better to higher protein, others might respond better to moderate protein, and hey, others might respond better to lower protein. But it all comes down to how you train and then getting a good amount of protein in post-workout. And we can definitely see that the differences in my body composition there, from sort of the dirty bulk towards the lean bulk as well. And I'd actually just had cupping therapy. I decided I want to get some visuals post-workout. Once again, abdominals looking lean, legs looking lean. So, part 6, the rate of weight gain. A good target for bulking is actually gaining roughly 0.25 to 0.5% of your body weight per week. And that keeps muscle gain as high as possible while controlling fat gain. You don't need to push above that, okay? Don't be fixated on as many calories as you can. The example is, if you weigh 80 kilo, you should aim to gain about 0.2 to 0.4 kilograms per week. So of course, in week 1, if I'm 80 kilo, and then I go to weigh myself at the end of the week, I should be 80.2 or 80.4. It's as simple as. If you gain weight faster than this, it's most likely fat and not muscle. And if you gain weight slower than this, you'll stay leaner. And the bulk is usually higher quality over time. And that's what I started to understand, that it's not about how fast you do it. It's about being patient and just looking at progress as a whole. Your body composition on a week by week basis, whether your stale weight is moving up in that 0.2 to 0.4 kilogram per week range, and whether your numbers were going up in the gym. And here's the example. I'm 94 kilos in both of these photos. This was actually a 2-year difference. So on the left-hand side, I'm holding a significant amount of body fat. On the right-hand side, significantly less body fat. But the scale is the same, 94 kilos. So what changed on the right? I was more patient. I focused on my training, and I focused on my body composition. I wasn't necessarily fixated on driving my scale weight up. I was still within that 0.2 to 0.4 kilogram per week range, but I also had more structure within my meals. I knew exactly what I was eating every single day, rather than on the left-hand side, a combination of if it fits your macros, eating foods on top of set meals, and there was no standardization. Whereas on the right-hand side, it was way more controlled. I also had one free meal per week. So a free meal is something off plan, but it's still within your calorie and also macronutrient range. So let's say, for example, I was eating 4 meals a day and it came to around 3,300 calories. And one of those meals was 450 calories. I just pulled that meal. But then that free meal, whether it's at a restaurant, whether it's at a cafe, whether I was cooking from home with family or my partner, it was still 450 calories. And the macronutrients were still the same or very similar in a plus or minus 10 gram range. So that was the difference. Way more control over the decisions that I made with food, rather than the left-hand side just being fixated on trying to get as strong as possible and eat as many calories as possible within a if it fits your macros approach. So part 7, protein and macronutrients. How do we actually design your macronutrient distribution? How much protein should you be consuming to build muscle? Protein, I would start with 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. This is enough to fully support muscle repair and growth. More than this does not significantly increase muscle gain if training and calories are already correct. So this ideology of if I eat more protein, surely I'm going to grow more. Well, it comes back to that sort of biological ceiling when it comes to calories. If you're consuming too many calories above your maintenance, not in that 200 to 400 range, but more than that, and it still comes from protein, that excess protein might be stored as body fat. Now, once again, there's new evidence to suggest that anybody who's ate a significant amount of protein above their sort of maintenance calories and their surplus calories hasn't gained body fat. There is research out there telling us that. But are they outliers? So that's why we have that range. Fats, 0.6 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight per day. That's going to support hormone production, things like testosterone, and it's also going to help your overall health, recovery, and also your long-term function. Fat is also going to help to transport and absorb fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. It's an incredibly important macronutrient. Please don't overlook it. And fat in the diet isn't fattening in itself. Yes, it contains 9 kilocalories per gram, so it's an energy-dense macronutrient, but it doesn't mean that you're going to gain body fat if you eat fat. It's your calories overall, not just the single macronutrient. Carbohydrates. So the remaining calories after protein and fat are set. So essentially, you're going to work out protein. You're then going to work out the amount of fat that you need to have, and then the rest of your calories come from carbohydrates. That's going to be the main fuel for training performance and also intensity. It's doing my OCD, and they should actually be below, so it's easier to understand, but I'm sure you get the idea. That's going to help to maintain your strength. We need to replenish liver and muscle glycogen because that's depleted when you are resistance training or any form of training whatsoever. It's also going to support your workout quality as well. Looking at meal frequency, so how often should you be eating? I'd aim to eat 3 to 5 meals per day. I would space those meals out every 3 to 5 hours. Just because, of course, if we are looking at body composition as well, we're looking at insulin spikes. We're also looking at regulating hunger hormones like ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone. I call it the gremlin because it comes out, shoots an arrow up to the brain and says you're super hungry. And then we got leptin, which is a satiety hormone. So we basically want to get your digestive system in tune with when you should be eating. Because like I mentioned before, I was eating 3,000 calories and then my appetite was so low that I started to live off sort of liquid calories, apple juice and chocolate milk and sugary refined carbohydrates. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying there's a better way. There's no real magic timing. I mean, like, consistency matters way more than the exact timing. It's the same with total calories and also total amount of protein rather than like the protein feedings in each meal, but it can help, especially with structure and strategy around your meals. A simple rule is eat often to hit your calories and also your protein comfortably. And to sort of give you some examples of protein food examples, choose 1 to 2 per meal. Chicken breast or chicken thigh, lean beef, 5 to 10% fat mince, eggs, egg whites, Greek yogurt, whey protein, turkey, salmon, whitefish, and even cottage cheese. Try to eat animal proteins. Of course, if you are someone that's vegan or vegetarian, then we obviously want to opt for more plant-based or vegan proteins as well. Are they going to be as anabolic? No. Carbohydrate food examples. We've got rice, pasta, oats, potatoes, sweet potato, bread, bagels, wraps, cereal, fruit, things like bananas, berries, and apples. I like blueberries. They are full of antioxidants as well. I think what the most important thing is actually keeping your gut health in tip-top shape, because those little workers inside of your gut, inside of your body, they need to be paid dividends. And of course, if you're just filling them up with sugary foods, they're not getting paid those dividends. They're not actually getting paid the wage for breaking down that food, processing it, and then metabolizing it. Whereas if you start to give it foods which are full of nutrients as well, things like vitamins and also minerals, then they're going to thrive instead of survive. We then have fat sources, so that's going to help with hormones and also your health. Things like olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, if you want to be more specific, peanut butter, nuts, so pippa nut butter, even like smooth, squeezy nut butters as well, almonds, cashews, whole eggs, avocado, fatty fish. But there we have sort of what I would be including in your meal structure and your meal designs. So now I'm going to take a look at part 8, which is training mistakes. The worst thing that you can do is actually not progressively overload each week. So if you're not sure what progressive overload means, it means increasing the weight, increasing the reps, or increasing your intensity or effort over time. So an example of how you might do this is, let's say you were benching 100 kilos and you did that for 8 repetitions in week 1. Well, in week 2, you might go 100 kilos for 9 repetitions. That's as simple as progressive overload can be. When we look at effort, it could be standardizing your technique, your tempo, your form as a whole. Are we actually targeting the specific muscle group, or are we just moving the weight from A to B? That's the biggest mistake that I see, is that most men just move weight, and women, from A to B rather than actually connecting with that muscle. This idea of mind-muscle connection, I would say it's overlooked. You need to standardize your form. You need to make sure that there is tension on that muscle. And even if you did just hit 100 kilos for 8 repetitions, and then in week 2, you still hit 100 kilos for 8 repetitions, but your form was 10 times better. You controlled the lowering portion of that movement, which is the eccentric, and then the concentric where you push it back up. That is progressive overload. So don't get caught up in sort of adding a rep or adding sort of weights to that bar if you are sacrificing your form, unless you have absolutely nailed that. Also, not doing enough weekly training volume per muscle. So you should be aiming for 8 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. And if you're training inconsistently or without a clear program, I'm afraid to say you are not going to build muscle. So if you're chopping and changing, if you're using ChatGPT to design your training programs, or if you're downloading one-off programs online and then you try that for 2 weeks and then you have a setback and then you start it again from week 1, you're just not going to build muscle. Okay, it's consistency and repetition over time with your training and with your nutrition and also with your recovery, which we'll come on to. Going to the gym without a structured plan or progression. So even if you did use ChatGPT, let's say you just went into the gym and you didn't have anything you were following, you just used whatever machine was in sight, I'm afraid to say you're not going to build muscle. Okay, and as a result, your muscles don't get strong enough signal to grow. The extra calories from bulking, they're not going to turn into muscle. As simple as that sounds, they're probably just going to be put towards other reserves in the body or even stored as body fat. And then progress stalls even if you're eating more. That's because you're chopping and changing. Your body's not getting accustomed or standardized when performing a specific exercise. But do not worry, because I have an Easter egg for you. This is the Average to Alpha resistance training program. And I can guarantee this is 99% better than online coaches' paid services. If you want to grab a free copy, you can DM me the word alpha or comment it below on YouTube or DM me it on Instagram, and I will send it over. It gives you the exact blueprint, how many days you should be training per week. In fact, let's zoom in and take a look here. It tells you your weekly instruction model, how to actually add reps, how to actually add weight. It gives you an example of the number of sets, the base, the rest across each week. It's broken down into specific phases: foundation, overload, and metabolic. It also tells you the exercise order. Why is it structured in that way? And it's all to maximize your muscle building capabilities, rather than just going in and thinking, well, yeah, I'll train some chest and then I'll do some back towards the end and I'll finish off with, a couple of bicep curls. This is the exact blueprint that you need to follow. And it's actually built on my resistance training program. The program that I followed for 10 plus years and still do. 15 years. How I managed to squat 300 kilos, how I managed to bench 200 kilos, how I managed to deadlift 320 kilos. Now, those numbers do not matter if you don't apply progressive overload, if you're not consistent with your training, if you're not consistent with your nutrition, if you're not consistent with your recovery. So you can DM me the word alpha to grab your free copy. Comment it below or just head over to Instagram and I'll shoot it over. So, part 9, recovery. When your recovery is poor, muscle protein synthesis is reduced. So, your ability to actually build muscle. So, if you can't build muscle, then it's less effective. Poor sleep, anything less than 7 to 9 hours, well, there's less growth hormone released. It reduces protein synthesis efficiency, so how well you can build muscle, how well we can actually build those bridges and repair those bridges. It leads to high muscle breakdown. It's a catabolic environment because your body is in a fight or flight state. It is super stressed. So we need to reduce that stress. We need to downregulate stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. We need to start getting a good night's sleep and prioritizing recovery to maximize your muscle building. The biggest question I get is, should I train more to build more muscle? No. Simple as that, no. If you have no rest days, muscle protein synthesis never fully returns to baseline before the next session. Therefore, you're going to have accumulated fatigue. And if you've got accumulated fatigue, that's going to reduce your training quality. So your ability to then spike muscle protein synthesis is reduced. So if you don't take any deloads and you've got constant fatigue, Well, your nervous system is going to be completely taxed. You're going to wake up tired, lethargic, fatigued. You're not going to perform well in the gym. You might go into the gym and start negotiating with yourself saying, I'm not going to lift as much today. Or I'm not going to do those exercises today. I'm going to swap them out. That's the easy route. Your training intensity drops without you noticing, and you've got lower mechanical tension. So the tension in which you can create an environment which actually stimulates muscle growth. That's going to be a weaker growth signal. That's also going to lead to soreness, and your performance is going to drop. So that damage which you've created actually exceeds your recovery capacity. So all of your body's energy, reserves, and resources go towards repairing that damage rather than towards muscle protein synthesis. So in short, sleep. Prioritize your recovery. Grab yourself an iMast. This is the Manta Pro iMast. It's about 80 to 100 pounds, or anybody in the US, probably about $99. It's incredible. It's a tool that you can use to reduce the amount of blue light, or light in general. On top of that, grab yourself some blue light blockers. In the evenings, when you're trying to wind down, reduce the amount of blue light that's coming into your eyes. Grab some of these. And then finally, if you live on a noisy road, or you're someone that's quite a light sleeper and you can pretty much hear all the creaks in your house or your apartment or wherever you are living, grab some earbuds. We don't need to talk about supplements or anything like that right now, because the most important thing is your routine around sleeping. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. If you do that, you will build muscle. Everything that we talked about so far in terms of training and nutrition, if you're not sleeping, you're not going to maximize your muscle building capabilities. It's all three combined. So, how do we actually bulk properly? Number one is I want you to set your calorie surplus using a precise method. You can head to caloriecalculator.net to determine the number of calories you should be consuming. Or another Easter egg for you is if you DM me the word calculator, a bit like alpha, I'll send you over our calorie calculator completely for free. You will then know the number of calories you should be consuming and how you can actually design your macronutrients. So once we've got your maintenance calories, because that's what we need to calculate, we're then going to add 300 calories. But of course, if you want to start on the lower end, 200 calories. If you want to start on the higher end, 400 calories. But remember the Goldilocks theory, too hot, too cold, just right. This is probably just right for you. That's going to be 300 calories per day as a starting point. And the adjustment rules are very, very simple. If your weight gain is less than 0.25% of your body weight per week, well, we're going to add 150 calories per day. So we're now up to 450 calories. If your weight gain is greater than 0.5%, not 5%, body weight per week, you're going to subtract 150 calories per day. So, we've now set the target weight gain rate. We're aiming for 0.25 to 0.5% of your body weight per week. So the example is if you're 80 kilos, your target is 0.2 to 0.4 kilograms per week. If you're outside that range, again, reduce your calories by 150. If it's too slow, increase your calories by 150. That's just two ways that you could look at it, okay? You can use it as a percentage, or you can use it as a rate of speed. If it's too fast, if it's too slow. The Goldilocks theory, too hot, too cold, just right. My opinion, just use the adjustment Wheatley rules. Step 3 is you're going to look at a training progression protocol. You can download or grab a free copy of our Average to Alpha resistance training program. Or if you decide to design your own, use a double progression system. If you're bench pressing and you're doing 3 to 4 sets, 6 to 10 reps, stay at the same weight until you hit 10 reps on all of those sets. Then increase the weight by 2.5 to 5%. And then drop back down to around 6 to 7 reps and then repeat. And you're going to do that throughout the entire training block. How long's the training block? Really depends. How long should be a reverse diet and bulk? It really depends. Anywhere between maybe 16 to 30 weeks. Comes down to how much muscle you need to gain. Also depends on your starting body composition. Now the rule is if you are not increasing your lifts every 1 to 2 weeks, you are not bulking effectively. So then you can go back to whether you increase calories or whether you reduce calories. Step 4, weekly volume targets. Large muscle groups, chest, back, legs, 12 to 18 sets per muscle group per week. Smaller muscles, biceps, triceps, shoulders, 8 to 14 sets per week. Now, once again, before I get the keyboard warriors in here and people that want to comment, it really comes down to your individual dose relationship with those sets. Some individuals who are advanced can get away with less volume because their intensity is high. Some people who are beginners need more volume because they don't know how to take a set to failure. I have always trained at 10 to 12 sets per muscle group per week. Of course, if I'm looking at sort of micro cycles and I'm trying to bring up smaller muscle groups or sort of muscle groups which are underdeveloped, then I'm going to add sets to that muscle group per week. But the rule is spread over 2 sessions per muscle per week. So upper lower would be a great split, average to alpha. Every set should be 0 to 3 reps from failure. So if I'm trying to do my 100 kilos for 8 repetitions on bench, and that is an RIR 1, that means I could have done 1 more rep. That's reps in reserve. So I want to be between that range, 0 to 3. If you recover easily, increase your volume by 1 set per muscle group per week. Step 5, tracking system. You need to be tracking your body weight. You need to weigh yourself daily in the morning fasted. Grab a notepad and pen. Use the inbuilt app from your weighing scales. Use your notes app. Write it on a whiteboard. Whatever it is, you need to track your scale weight. Make sure it's within that 0.2 to 0.4 kilogram per week range. Use the 7-day average as well. Looking at progress checks, your body weight trend should be going up. If it's not, then guess what? You go back to calories, whether you add or subtract calories. Gym performance, key lifts, they should be going up. Your waist management should also be managed as well. If you find your waist is getting bigger, you might be put on a little bit too much body fat. Therefore, you need to pull back. Step 6, auto adjust your rules. Step 6, auto adjust your rules. That's going to be important. So after 2 weeks of data, if your weight gain is below a target, so 0.25% per week, then you add 150 calories per day. Notice how I've said this 3 times in this blueprint. If your weight gain is above the target, 0.5% per week, you remove 150 calories per day. If your weight is perfect but strength is not improving, then add 1 set per muscle group per week. I've said this 3 times. Calories are super important, but also your progression within the gym is important. Please follow this blueprint exactly, and you will build an insane amount of muscle. So, part 11, the final takeaway and the setup. I hope you understand now that bulking is not just about eating as much as possible. It's about creating a controlled and measurable surplus that supports muscle growth. Your real progress actually comes from the factors which we talked about: training, nutrition, and recovery. You need to be progressively overloading with enough weekly volume. Stop trying to get away with doing less sets. My opinion, do more sets. Yes, fatigue might accumulate and it might be higher, but you also might build a little bit more muscle. Yes, there's also research to suggest you don't need as much volume, and intensity is incredibly more important. Try both. Nutrition, small surplus. Correct macros and adjustments. Make sure those adjustments are standardized. Make sure you have structure within your meal frequency and you're strategizing around your meals. And then recovery, sleep. 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep. Make sure you're taking rest days. Make sure you're looking at fatigue management, because more is not necessarily better. And to give you an example of my current bulk, this is me right now. I've gone from 88 kilo to 92 kilo. My starting weight, like I said, was 88. The current weight is 92. The total gain is actually 4 kilo. And I've gained mostly lean muscle mass and minimal fat gain. If we actually compare that side by side, I look fuller on the right. My body composition is fairly similar. Looking at the timeline, my scale weight target was around 0.22 to 0.44 kilograms per week. And the time taken, it's actually taken 14 weeks. Faster than this, it would have been mostly fat gain. Slower than this, I would have been under eating and poor progression, but my environment has been great for this. That's why this push-up has been very successful so far. My starting calories were around 2,900. My bulk, 3,248. I've not actually changed my calories in the space of 14 weeks. My protein was at 230 grams per day. So notice how I've actually chosen 1.2 grams per pound of body weight per day. We've talked about kilograms today, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day. If you're someone that uses pounds, anywhere between 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound per day. So 928 calories came from my protein. My fats, these are from pretty much extra virgin olive oil, eggs, avocado, nuts. The 80 grams there yielded 720 calories per day. And in my carbohydrates, 400 grams. That was the remainder, roughly 1,600 calories. And that's the difference in the space of 14 weeks. If you enjoyed this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe. For more content like this, go and check out my other videos or go and head over to my Instagram @ChatFitCoach. We're trying to hit 10,000 followers over there. So go ahead, drop me a follow. And of course, if you do want the Average to Alpha resistance training program completely for free, it's 99% better than online coaches' paid services. How do I know? I've been in a room with all of those online coaches over the years, and I'm afraid to say a lot of them are using AI now. A lot of them are designing resistance training programs and sort of nutrition plans using AI. That doesn't sit well with me. So go ahead, grab our free copy of the Average to Alpha resistance training program. Or if you did want a copy of our calorie calculator, just DM me the word calculator and I'll send it over. If you managed to stay this far into the video, first and foremost, thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. A lot of time and effort has gone into this video, and you're here for the final bonus, which is the peri-workout nutrition. So what is peri-workout? Peri-workout is essentially the nutrients that you're having pre, intra, and post-workout. So it's essentially the food and drink that you're going to be consuming before the gym, during the gym, and also after the gym. It doesn't switch on muscle growth directly, but what it does is it improves conditions that control muscle protein synthesis over time. So basically training those internal little workers and also regulating your organs to do their jobs at specific moments in time. So training is still going to be the main driver of muscle growth. Remember, we're breaking down those bridges. So resistance training creates that mechanical tension in the muscle fibers. So the muscle fibers sort of break, and then that triggers a rise in muscle protein synthesis. So the bigger and the better the training stimulus, the stronger the growth signal. So if you can create as much mechanical tension as you can in that resistance training session, you are going to grow significantly more, especially if you nail something called your peri-workout nutrition. And that works by supporting that training stimulus. Remember that we're breaking down those bridges and then we're repairing those bridges. So look at your pre-workout. That's going to improve your training output. So we want to have some carbohydrates in there. That's going to increase something called muscle glycogen availability. So glycogen is actually broken down when we resistance train into glucose and then glucose 6-phosphate, glycolysis, all that good stuff. We'll cover that in another video. But glycogen is the main fuel, okay? And more fuel equals better performance, better volume, better reps, better intensity. That might make the difference when it comes to benching that 100 kilos for 8 repetitions. And then in week 2, you might bench the 100 kilos for 10 repetitions because you've had a good amount of carbohydrate in your pre-workout meal. So that means you can actually do higher training volume, which leads to greater total mechanical tension. Mechanical tension is the main driver of hypertrophy, therefore that's going to maximize muscle protein synthesis. Now, intra-workout, as much as we haven't talked about that, but hey, why not include it? Intra-workout, we want to have a bolus of amino acids. So you can grab some EAAs, which are essential amino acids, and you could also have an influx of carbohydrates, some fast-digesting carbohydrates, things like cyclic dextrin or even honey. Again, replenishing that liver and muscle glycogen so we can continue to train at a high standard. And then post-workout supports muscle protein synthesis. So after training, muscle protein synthesis, it's elevated for about 24 to 48 hours. So remember, those bridges are broken down. We need to get some protein in. Okay, so protein provides the amino acids, those raw materials for muscle repair and growth. Something that we haven't talked about is leucine. You want to have roughly 3 to 4 grams of leucine within that meal, in all meals in general, to help with muscle protein synthesis. And then carbohydrates, they're going to help to restore glycogen and improve your recovery rate. I would actually say post-workout, you want to have moderate protein, extremely high carbohydrate. Why? Because we need to replenish liver and muscle glycogen, right? So around your peri-workout nutrition, that's where you want to allocate your carbohydrates, because insulin is going to be produced by the pancreas. It's a storage hormone. It's going to drive the uptake of glucose from the blood into your cells. We replenish that liver and muscle glycogen. We then activate something called mTOR, which is going to help with muscle protein synthesis and help maximize your muscle building capabilities. So how's that help? It's going to lead to faster recovery. You're going to have better performance in your next session, and better performance, well, you're going to have higher weekly training quality. If you've got higher weekly training quality, more total muscle protein synthesis over time. We want to allocate the majority of your carbs around your peri-workout window for this. So I guess across the day, if you were to have 4 meals, and let's say meal 3 and meal 4 are your training meals, well, meal 1 and meal 2, keep them pro-fat. Meal 3 and 4, that's where you want to allocate those carbs. Why fat is lower post-workout? Dietary fats actually slow gastric emptying. We want to get glucose into our cells as fast as we possibly can. If we had fats in there, it's going to delay amino acid and glucose delivery. There's going to be barriers which stop sort of the influx of those amino acids and glucose into the cell. We don't want that. We want to get them in as fast as possible. That concludes today's video, and I want to know, what was the biggest takeaway that you learned today? Drop it in the comments down below. I look forward to seeing you in another video. Until next time, goodbye.